Hi there, this is Unmesh from PiXimperfect, and today I'm going to share with you how to add speed to your photos in Photoshop. You see, when you're capturing a fast object, your camera moves with that of the object, right? And therefore, the object doesn't blur, the background does, and that's what we're going to do in this video. Also, there are some movements that happen with the object, inside the object, within the object. We need to consider that too. So without any further ado, let's get started. Back in the magical world of Photoshop, and if you want to go ahead and download this photo and follow along, check the links in the description. Now have a look at this photo. There's not much space to it. The object is too large. We need some space, right? We need to give him some space. So let's expand this photo. Press C for the crop tool, alright? And we can choose the original ratio of the image from the top right here. Let's make it larger. Hold the Alt key or the Option key. Then when you make it larger, it will be made larger from the center. So we're going to make it about this big. What do you think? It looks all right. Hit enter or return once you're satisfied. Now the question is, how are we going to fill these gaps? Very simple. You already might have guessed it. Content aware. All right. So first of all, let's go ahead and select them by simply choosing this tool, the magic wand tool, and click once. There you go. All of it is now selected. But if you just zoom in, when you use the content aware fill, there might be a little gap. It might give you a little thin gap. We need to avoid that. To avoid that, we need the selection to dig in a little bit. So to make that happen, let's go to select and then modify, expand. We can expand by 3 or 4 pixels, that's fine. Let's go for 4. As you can see, the selection is digging in a little bit. All right, you can go to edit and then content aware fill. Click on that. If you want to keep it non-destructive, you can do it that way. You can output to new layer, but I don't want to make it so complicated. So I'm going to just choose current layer, and it does a pretty good job, right? Also, we didn't want the subject to be a part of this, so we could have just masked it out. But in this case, it already is doing a fantastic job automatically, and it's going to be blurred, so it doesn't matter about all of these imperfections here and there. So it's fine. Hit OK. It looks okay. And there you go. Press Ctrl or Command D to deselect. Now we are ready to add some motion to our photo. First of all, press Ctrl or Command J twice. One is for the motion blurred background and the second one is for the subject. So we need to separate the subject, right? So let's name the first one subject, the one at the top, and the second one at the bottom. Let's name this blurred or motion blur background. All right, looks pretty cool. Now, one of the most essential things to keep in mind while blurring the background or doing anything to the background, adding motion blur, whatever you want, first we need to extract the subject, right? So that no matter what we do to the background, the subject doesn't get affected. So let's select the subject layer. We can keep both of these layers turned off if you want to. Now you can go ahead and use any of your favorite selection methods to make a selection of the subject. This is not a selection class, so I've already taught how to select subjects in lots of videos, and most of them are linked up in the description if you're interested. I've already made a selection for this, so I'm just going to simply load that. So I'm going to go to select, load selection, and selection. Let's load it. All right, you can use any of your favorite selection methods to do this. You can use the quick selection tool. You can use select subject, the automatic one, and then refine it later, whatever you want. For this one, I had used the pen tool. If you want to learn how to make a selection using the pen tool, there's a complete guide on how to do that. Definitely watch it. It's an old video, but very useful. So once you have the selection in place, you can press this button called the mask button. Press that. Now it will create a mask of it. All right. Now you can convert this into a smart object because we're going to be adding some blur to this one as well. So right click on it and then choose convert to smart object. All right, now this is a smart object. Now let's turn on both of these. You can turn this off, turn off the subject for a moment. Now in the background where we're going to add some motion blur, if we directly add blur, there's going to be a problem. And what is going to be the problem? Ghosting. So let me show this to you, then you'll understand. So I'm just going to add a very simple blur here, not the advanced one that I'm going to show you later. So even if we go to filter, blur, and then even if we choose motion blur, and let's choose the right angle. All right, this looks pretty okay. Look at the ghosting it's creating. Let me decrease the value. All right. Now it does look like it's in motion. However, look at the ghosting around the subject. Why this is happening? Let's turn off the subject for a moment. Have a look. The subject is getting blurred too, and it's creating that ghosting effect around the edges. We want to avoid that. So to avoid that, what do we need to do? First of all, let's go back. Make sure the subject layer is turned off. And in the motion blur background layer, we just need to remove the subject. And how do we do that? We just did it. Content aware fill. Alright, so first of all, we need to make a selection of the subject. We already have the selection. Once you have masked out the subject right here, you can create a selection from a layer. Hold the Control or Command, click on the thumbnail of the subject layer to make a selection of it. Now, we need to have a little bit of gap because we don't want to have this line around the edge once we use the content aware fill. So to have that extra gap, we need to expand the selection, right? Let's go to Select, Modify, and then Expand. Let's choose somewhere between 25, 30. What do you think? 30 is good. Look at the gap it's adding. All right, adequate, nice gap. Just make sure no place any of the object is poking out of this selection. We don't want that to happen. All right, so once you have made sure that happens, you can simply use Content Aware Fill by going to Edit, Content Aware Fill. Now it's going to show you a preview. If there are certain areas which you don't want to be a part of the filling, you can just erase it on the left hand side right here. By the way, again, I have a complete video on the brand new Content Aware Fill dialog box. You can check it out right here. Once you're satisfied, this is pretty okay. Hit OK and it's replaced. Press Ctrl or Command D to deselect. Now keep in mind, if you don't have the brand new Content Aware Fill, don't worry. Don't sweat it. You can still apply Content Aware Fill. Let me show you how. So let's say you're using an older version of Photoshop which does not have the brand new Content Aware Fill. In that case, you would simply go to Edit and then Fill, and inside of Fill, inside of the Contents drop down, just choose Content Aware and hit OK. And it's not very advanced as the brand new one, but it does a pretty good job and gets your work done. There you go. It's good too, but I like the brand new one. So let me apply that again. Edit, Content Aware Fill. I like the defaults. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And it does a pretty good job, and it's a bit faster too. Press Ctrl or Command D to deselect. Let's turn on the subject. And now let's add blur. But before we add any blur, we want to be able to have the ability to change the values of the blur later, right? And for that, what do? We convert the layer into a smart object. So with the motion blur background layer selected, let's go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, hit OK. This converts the layer into a smart object. Now let's go to Filter, Blur Gallery. Now we're not going to add that simple motion blur. We're going to add something complex. Blur Gallery, inside of that, let's go for Path Blur. This is a brilliant blur. There are lots of variations you can do. If you don't want to add a simple straight blur for different projects, not for this project, you can also add a curved blur, something like this. You can add as many points as you want. So there are lots of exciting things you can do. Let's not get carried away. Let's get back to what we were doing. So let me delete this point. All right. So we wanted to add a blur starting from here and going there. So we can just make sure that the line is straight. All right, pretty good. Now we can increase the speed. Speed just is what it says. The higher the speed will be of this gentleman. I don't know if you can hear the crows in the background, but I'm sorry about it. All right, so this is okay. So I'm gonna keep the speed somewhere at this. Let me make him go at a very high speed. Now you might be thinking that's too high. That's actually not, because we need to work with taper. Now taper is a setting that helps you fade in the edges of the blur. Does that make sense? No? Let's take a look at this area, or let's take a look at these blurred areas, right? These stretched areas. If you increase the taper, see what happens. See how the edges fade in naturally, right? Look how the edges fade in. Without the taper, this looks unnatural. Totally unnatural, abruptly ending, but with taper, the edges fade in pretty nicely. It's taking a little while to preview it, but you get the point. So I think I'm gonna add some little speed, not too high of a speed. Once you're satisfied with the speed amount, you can just hit OK. Now if you want to learn how endpoint speed works, I have another video. Check this out. It has path blur explained in way more detail than this video. Hit OK. Now that does look pretty good, doesn't it? Now you know what looks strange? Have a look at this. If you zoom into the shadow, how strange does it look? It looks like the scooter or whatever he is driving is just not on the ground, right? If you look at the original photo, look at this. There are some dark shadows under the wheels in addition to the original shadow. We are missing that. We lost it due to the blur. Let's turn everything back on. All right. Now we need to add that shadow on top again. So on top of the motion blur background, let's create a brand new layer. And you don't have to do anything complex. Just take a brush and then sample the shadow color. hold the Alt key or the Option key, click to sample the shadow color, and make sure the opacity and flow both are at 100, and take a soft round brush and just dab. All you gotta do, dab. Dabbing is the secret of life. Dab it right there and press Ctrl or Command T. Okay, now we need to flatten the dab. Hold the Shift key and then just flatten it like this. If you're using an older version of Photoshop, you wouldn't have to hold the Shift key. Transformation shortcuts have been changed lately and it has been a whole lot of confusion. But anyway, just make it flat. This seems to be about right. Make it a little longer. All right. Now, if you place it there, how does it look? It looks kind of okay, not exciting. Change the blend mode from normal to multiply. Multiply is a blend mode which darkens. Now let's move it there. With the help of the arrow keys, just take it slowly and gradually in there. And there you go. It looks so much better than before. Now let's copy the same shadow for the front wheel. So hold the Alt key or the Option key, click and drag and drop it on the front wheel. Now we need to make sure that the front wheel is touching the ground, not above the ground. And for that, just move it at the top. Much better. So there you go, my friend. But it still does look a little strange, right? How do we fix it? Maybe I don't know. Or maybe I do. First of all, let's merge both of these layers. So select the first one, hold the Ctrl or Command, select the second one, press Ctrl or Command E, and we can name this Wheel Shadows. Now, did you notice a strange thing happen once we merged both of them? What happened? The blend mode got away. Have a look. The blend mode is now normal. We need to change it back to multiply. So that's what happens when you merge different layers. Anyway, we also want a little bit of the darkness on the wheel as well. So let's make a copy of this. Press Ctrl or Command J. Place it at the very top on top of the subject. Hold the Alt key or the Option key. Click on the line between these two layers. Now it's limited to the wheel and have a look. This area is a little dark, giving it a little realistic look. All right. Now you can decrease the opacity if you want to. I think it's too high. So we're going to just adjust it accordingly. And also the wheels are too sharp. So we need to work with the masks a little bit. So select the subject, click on the mask button. Now take the brush with a soft round brush. And I should have given some time to the selection, but I didn't. Anyway. So make sure that the mask is kind of soft here as well. Maybe we want to move the wheel shadow a little towards the top. Now it looks like it's touching the ground. It looks pretty good. Have a look. Pretty good, doesn't it? So without the wheel shadows, it does look strange. But with the wheel shadows, it looks excellent. Now wheel shadows, let's name the top one as On Wheels. Okay, pretty cool. Now, if you look closely, there are a lot of things moving besides the background. If you zoom in, have a look at the leg. The leg's been pushing the scooter, right? And it has a movement. So we need to add some blur to it as well. The wheel's been rotating, right? So we need to add some blur to it as well. So first of all, let's add some to the wheels. So select the subject layer and then let's go to Filter, Blur Gallery, and then Spin Blur, because we need to what? Spin the wheels, right? So let's just bring it right here. Zoom in. Now, as you can see, it's lagging a little bit. Let's turn off the preview for a moment, right? So that it's fast, we can adjust it right now. And then once we have positioned it well, we can just turn the preview on. Let's make the circle a little smaller by using this point right there. So let's drag it in, zoom in, adjust it properly. Now look at these 4 points in the inside. 1, 2, 3, 4. The blur happens inside these 4 points. So if you bring these 4 points like this, and then let's turn on the preview, you will notice that the blur happens inside those points, and outside those points, it goes from blurred area to zero blur area along the edge. So we want to bring these points to the very edge and then apply the blur. Yes, we do need a lot of blur. This seems to be about right. So let's turn off the preview because it gets laggy. So we know what the values are. Let's replicate it for the front wheel. So we're going to create one more point right here and then similarly make it smaller. You can also stretch it if you want to a little bit here and there. And the value we chose was about 168 to 177, something like that. And now if you turn on the preview, let's check if both of them look right. So let's check the preview. Now here's what I accidentally did. I accidentally moved the center on the left view so it looks strange. Let's move the center to the center. Hold the Alt key or the Option key. Click and drag to move the center. So let's move it to the center. Just make sure the right one is on the center as well. So to move the center, all you have to do is to hold the Alt key or the Option key, click and drag to move the center. Now let's turn on the preview. Let's see what kind of a result it's creating. It should be pretty good. All right, now there might be some disruptions here and there, but it's a pretty good result. We can actually work with that. So this one, let's decrease the value a little bit. I think it's kind of too much. 130 seems to be okay. Let's set the same thing for the right one. Sorry, the front view, 130. That's pretty fine. Now that we have added the spin blur, we also need to add some blur to the leg as well. But for that, we don't need to add spin blur. The leg is moving in a direction. It's moving along what? A path. So what do we need to add? Path blur. You can turn off the preview for a moment because it kind of just lags up everything. Let's turn on the path blur, and then we know the leg is moving from there to there in that direction. So something like this. And it's also moving along a curve, right? We know it's moving along this curve. So now you can just increase the speed a little bit. Now let's turn on the preview so that you can see what's happening, and also turn off spin blur for a moment so that it just doesn't delay things. A value of 9 seems good to me. We don't want to move it too much. All right, let's turn on the spin blur as well and just hit OK. Let it process it. I know it's going to take a little while. Now, one of the major advantages of working with smart objects, beside it being non-destructive, is that it comes with a mask, a smart filter mask. So if you open this up, have a look. We added from the blur gallery a lot of blurs, but it comes with this mask so that we can only apply it in areas we want, right? So select this mask, press Ctrl or Command I. Right now, blur is applied nowhere, right? So we can take the brush with a soft round brush, white as the foreground color. Of course, we can just bring it to this area, wheels to this area. We'll refine that later, and also to the legs. Just a part of it, something like this. See? Now the blur is looking a little more natural. All right. We might also want to add a little bit on the clothes. So for that, you can decrease the flow to about 10% and slowly and gradually paint here just to add a little bit of blur. Let's say this part of the cloth moved a little bit too fast, so we can add that here. It looks pretty nice, doesn't it? Gives it a pretty good effect. Now keep in mind, this leg, the head, they are all still, so we cannot add too much blur to it. So now let's work with the wheels because they look strange. We need to, of course, erase the blur from certain areas. So take black as the foreground color, increase the flow, and just paint back certain areas, which are still. Now I did a pretty fast job. Now you can zoom in and just take your time and do it slowly and gradually. Now I know this red here is blurred too, it's a part of the blur, but that's okay. Nobody's gonna notice that much. But if you wanna go ahead and remove that, you can remove it by using quantitative fill and then apply the spin blur. Make it complicated if you want to, take your time. But this doesn't require that much of a dedication. This is a pretty simple image. This looks pretty okay. Have a look. Once you zoom out, this still area is still. Good, isn't it? Let's do it with this one. Now, by the way, this looks all right, but there is something missing. You know what it is? Once you zoom in, the blur looks okay. But if you have a closer look, there is some noise in here. But there is no noise in the blurred area because the noise is blurred, right? So we need to add some noise on top of it. Even in the background, it's all blurred, but where is the noise? There is noise in the subject, but not there in the background. So we need to add that as well. Let's start with the noise of the blurred areas of the subject. And there are ways to do it inside of Blur Gallery as well. So if you double click on Blur Gallery, and in here, you will have those options. So let's zoom in. First of all, let's turn off Path Blur. Just makes things a lot slower. Let's just zoom into one of the wheels. That would be adequate. Let's click on noise right there and just increase the amount of noise. See, it's adding some noise to it. Now control the amount, how much you want to match with the existing ones. So about this one is fine. You can control the size of the noise. So how big you want the noise to be, how small you want the noise to be. This size is perfect. You can control the roughness. You can add color to the noise if you want to. And if you want to take the noise away from the highlights, you can control that as well. Yeah, this looks pretty fine. Once you're satisfied with the noise, just hit OK. There you go. Now look how well it is matching. Look at the back, how well it is matching. But I think we forgot something. We forgot to turn on the path blur. So let's go back to the blur gallery. Just inside the blur tools, make sure path blur is checked and hit OK. Look at this, it looks so much better. It even added noise in the path blur areas, which is perfect. Now we need to work on the background as well. So we need to get back to the motion blur background. Let's open that up and double click on the blur gallery to open that. Zoom in. Notice the noise on the subject. We just need to match that with that of the background. So we will click on the noise right there and then just increase the amount. This much is fine to me. Let's check the different areas. So let's scroll up and check with the head area. Yeah, it matches pretty well. If we change the roughness a little bit, it does match up pretty well. So let's increase it just a tad bit and hit OK once you're satisfied with the amount. And this is pretty good. So there you go. It does look pretty good. Now there's a problem that I see right now. Have a look at the edge of the subject. It's just too sharp, right? The masking needs to be a little soft. However, we already converted it into a smart object, remember? How can we get back to the original mask of the subject? Well, it's pretty simple. If you double click on the subject, it'll open up another document with the subject mask. All you gotta do here is to blur it. So you can use the blur tool and just start blurring the mask. Make sure the mask is selected, not the subject, and start blurring it. Or you can also use the smudge tool. First of all, let's create a black background so that you can see what's happening. All right, put it at the back, and then you can select the mask right there, and you can use the smudge tool and just push it in a little bit. It also adds a little bit of blur to it. Okay, now after you have pushed in just a little bit, you can use the blur tool and just start painting on it. Pushing in is important because if you directly blur, a little bit of the background might show up. Alright, this looks pretty good. Now let's delete the black background or just simply turn it off. Press Ctrl or Command S to save it. Now it's gonna take a little while. You know why? Because all of the filters is gonna be applied again because the smart object is being updated. So it will update, it will apply all the filters, the blur filters that we applied before. So yeah, it's gonna take a little while. You see, that's the price we pay when we work non-destructively, but it's worth it because we were able to go back and adjust the mask if we wanted to. So let's get back to our document, and there you go. It's much better now. All right, it looks pretty good. It's all ready. Your image is absolutely ready. Now on top of it, you can put as many elements as you want. You can put some straight, speedy lines if you want. You can add some text. You can do some color grading. So let's do a little bit of color grading on top of it. Simple color grading. So first of all, let's make the brights brighter. So click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose curves. No PiXimperfect tutorial is complete without curves. You already knew that, didn't you? So take this slider on the right hand side to the left slowly and gradually. And we need to make sure that we are not losing any details. To do that, hold the Alt key or the Option key and then take the slider. As soon as you begin to see the artifacts, that shows that we are losing details in those areas. So at about that, we can stop. Now let's apply Crisp Warm to it. Click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose Color Lookup. Crisp Warm has always been my favorite. Click on the drop down menu and then choose Crisp Warm. It's making the shadows very dark. Let's only apply it in the highlights. So double click on the right hand side of the layer and take it away from the shadow areas by taking the slider of the underlying layer from left to right. It hasn't even been loaded yet. Alright, so take it from left to right, hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on the slider, break it apart, make it softer. This looks nice, hit OK. And there you go, just a little bit of color grading makes a hell lot of difference. If you want to go ahead and do even more color grading, you can do so. One of the panels that I love for color grading and I use personally is the infinite color panel. So if you're interested, you can check out the panel at pix.live/ICP. Let me just quickly show that to you. Go to Window, Extensions, and after you install the panel, it will be right there, infinite color. And all you gotta do is to just choose the intensity of color grading. If you want just light, minimal color grading, choose light, medium, intense, intense for intense color grading, and just simply click on create. That's all you gotta do. Do you like this color grading? No? Click on create again. By the way, we already made a video about this a year ago. If you want to check it out, you can also check it out right here and check out the plugin at pix.live/ICP. Both of those links are in the description. So we're gonna just click on create again and stop at the ones we like. So let's say you like this, but it's kind of too much. So select the infinite color group and decrease the opacity and have it a little bit, probably at about 25% or even 20. And let's rename this to 1 so that it won't change again. Let's open the panel again and click on create. So that's how you stack different color grading layers. And this time we want to go with medium. And there's a lot of exciting settings here that you can change to alter any aspect of the color grading. And we have already talked about it in previous videos about infinite color panel. All right, I absolutely love this. So let's stop at that. Select the group again and just apply a little bit of it, about 35%. All right. Let's name this 2. So there you go, your speeding image is ready. And by the way, we talked about some lines you can go ahead and add. So you can create a layer on top of the subject, take the brush, and with a hard round pressure size brush, you can just paint some lines in white. So with white as the foreground color, you can just paint some speedy lines if you wanted to. Sorry about that. When you click and draw the line, if you hold the Shift key, it will create a straight line. Right? Something like this. And at the bottom of the subject as well, if you create one more layer, and then you add some lines here. Whoops. It kind of joins the dot when you just don't release the Shift key, so don't forget to release it. So you can do something like this. It's also exciting. You can keep it turned off, turned on, whatever you wish. It's your image. So that's how to add some speed to your photos in Photoshop. I hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure to give us a like, and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe, ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss any other future tips, tricks, or tutorials. Let's do a quick little recap. First of all you gotta do is to extract the subject. Whenever you make any changes in the background, extract the subject, then take away the subject from the background by using content aware fill, and then just apply a path blur to it. And also you can apply some blur to the wheels, path blur to the legs if they're moving, and on top of that you can work on the shadows, and later you can work with color grading to enhance the effect even more. That was the basic gist of it. Thank you so much for watching, and I would like to take this moment to thank all these nice and amazing people for supporting this channel on Patreon and helping keep PiXimperfect free for everybody forever. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.